I never thought in this far-flung areas of Derbyshire that I would find a church so interesting, and still it's in some way or the other connected to slavery via the cotton trade.
It's for the people to know about our history, and for us as well to know about their history.
During this short film, we'll follow the legacy makers on their journey around the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site to uncover its connections to the transatlantic slave trade and the enslavement of Africans in the Americas. We will explore some of the history of Darley Abbey Mill and Church, owned by the Evans family, contrasting the lives of the mill workers and those enslaved in the Americas. We will hear from the legacy makers themselves, partner organisations linked to the project, and some of the artists involved and inspired by this heritage project. And to see some of the creative ways employed to capture, unravel, share and preserve the acknowledgement of our ancestors' contribution to the cotton trade here at the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site. I'm here in Darley Abbey, a suburb just over 1 mile away from Derby city centre, and once home to the former cotton spinning mill owned by the Evans family. Thomas Evans originally started a mill building programme here in 1782, and to attract and retain workers for the mill, the Evans also built housing for their workforce, as well as other amenities including this church, built by his son in 1819.
We've been celebrating 200 years here at St Matthew's in Darley Abbey, so welcome to St Matthew's. 200 years ago, Walter Evans, the mill owner, built this church for the people of the village. But he built the church really for his workers.
In 2019, Legacy Makers launched the next phase of their project to coincide with the bicentenary of St Matthew's Church. This event brought together parishioners, local people, volunteers, partner organisations, historians from Nottingham University and local groups such as the Darley Abbey Community Association and Darley Abbey Historical Research Group. So how did people respond to the launch and the search into Darley Abbey's use of raw cotton and enslavement?
We've looked at history, we're moving on together as a group. Lots of group members have remained with the group, so it's now 5 years plus. Very exciting about the future. I think because we've got more confidence as adults and more confidence as individual, I think we're now ready to work with younger people, which does take a lot of skills, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of enthusiasm, and I think that's what I'm looking forward to most.
It's part of the history that I know so little about, and it's challenging me in all sorts of ways. I like to think I'm a broad-minded, normal, happy, wonderful Englishman, but I find my racial questions being checked.
We had a meeting and I asked the question, was slavery mentioned before? And the answer was no. So it's a form of education from both us and the parishioners and the people.
I actually feel partly ashamed that I and our community don't know about it, but the whole feeling of the group is so positive that I've already moved on to those connections.
I would like people to be more accustomed to look at black people or anybody of a different hue and wonder, how am I connected with them? Because we are connected.
The young ones are coming up now. They will learn about it as well. Because once we talk about it, share it with them, they'll know that when they say you're from the slavery group, they know where we're coming from and where we're going.
The building of St Matthew's Church demonstrated the wealth the Evans family acquired, not just through cotton spinning, but also through a variety of other business interests, including banking and paper making. The church was a place where the mill workers and their families were baptised, married and buried. At Darley Abbey, there's no museum or visitor centre on site. And there was no interpretation of the links between the use of raw cotton and enslavement on the existing interpretation board. I can see why legacy makers made this their next site to explore, to see if the cotton once used here, in this mill owned by the Evans family, was the same cotton picked by those enslaved across the globe. Since its initial launch back in 2014, Legacy Makers has focused on enabling people to discover and reflect on the connections of local heritage sites to the legacies of the transatlantic slave trade and the enslavement of Africans in the Americas.
We travelled all over England. We visited a lot of places and we did some exciting things, quite a lot of things.
I became a legacy maker in about 2014, I believe. I saw the huge machines where they produced the cotton. They talked about slavery. But part of me, I was quite upset when I heard how people were profiting from slaves, which are black people. I was quite sad at that particular time.
Profits were gained from ownership of enslaved people, usually whilst living in Britain as an absentee landlord of a plantation, or through the use of goods that were cultivated by enslaved people, such as raw cotton used in cotton spinning mills. Legacy makers had previously worked with Newstead Abbey in Nottinghamshire, home of the absentee sugar plantation owner Colonel Thomas Wildman. Legacy makers also explored the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site in Derbyshire that had once relied on importing raw cotton from parts of the world where enslaved African labour was exploited.
Is the link between slavery and cotton and the role that slaves played in that, which is very extensive, because not only did the slaves sort of work on the cotton, is how that traveled from the Americas and ended up here in England, and from that vast wealth was made.
I was fascinated about the machinery and the involvement with the mill and the cotton. What I realized that a lot of the staff, they didn't really know much about the cotton, and at one point a question was asked, where does the cotton come from? And nobody was able to tell them the right place. They just said it come from Liverpool, I think that was.
Legacy makers have researched documents and visited historical places of interest in the search to unlock evidence for the cotton supply chains that the Evans family used and their connections to enslaved labour in the Americas. During their search, legacy makers found numerous letters written by the Evans to their cotton brokers from 1788 onwards, such as this one to a Mr. Samuel Wagstaff, 27 Cannon Street, London, requesting more cotton from Jamaica. Letters written by the Evans to their cotton brokers requested cotton be sent from places where cotton was being picked by the enslaved. Legacy makers also explored the lives of enslaved Africans and the experience of picking cotton, as well as exploring the lives of mill workers at Darley Abbey. So, after learning about the lives of the mill workers and those enslaved, what contrast or conclusions did the legacy makers draw?
Mill workers, even though the work was hard, nobody can say that the work was easy, they still went home. They still have a family that they went home to. Any one of my ancestors in those days could have been sold. So tomorrow morning I wake up and I say, well, where's Lisa? And they said, well, Massa, sell him yesterday. Me gone. You'll never see you again.
At Derwent Valley, people were saying that the people were, like slaves. But I didn't think that. And a lot of people didn't think that because they had a choice. They could go home, they could look after their children, and they were given a wage. A slave had to be taught to do what they had to do.
The mill workers lived the families was in poverty, but the brutality that the slaves got was not the same. Because, you would be beaten if you didn't pick enough cotton. You'd be beaten if you broke a dish. You'd be beaten if you wasn't bearing any children. So, that was horrific. And not only that, you had to pick the cotton, but you had to grow your own food to eat. So if you didn't have a little crop, you didn't eat.
The project welcomed the opportunity to play a role in informing and shaping interpretation at heritage sites through co-creation and collaboration. This was done by facilitating and taking part in meetings and workshops to help develop resources and holding events such as the Discovery Day at Cromford Mills, providing a range of activities including a gospel performance focused on the history of cotton and enslavement. Makers used many creative ways to capture, ponder and share their findings and feelings with others.
Well, we get together sometimes and we do crafting, we do a bit of crafting, we do singing, poetry, and each person in the team will just throw a word at the person who is involved, and then all those words gather together and then make a song or even to write poetry from it, which is quite encouraging.
Tracing our ancestors, seeking acknowledgement for their contribution, cotton mills, sugar plantation, heritage building, looking to the past to build a better tomorrow with justice, truth and love.
What was discovered during the workshops of this project and what reverberates from this project continues not just in written form but also in visuals and in audio. I felt it was important to create a song that wasn't necessarily a lament as in a dirge, but it was a lament as in trying to find some way of surviving. So it had to be tinged with hope. The title of the song is called Wishing Fields, and it's a sense in which the enslaved people of Africa would find themselves in a place like Derbyshire or anywhere else around the world and just longing for home. One short love, standing alone together, as the seed in my father's eye, as I'm hearing my mother's cry.
Nobody really has written anything, to me, I might be wrong, about women in the Caribbean and their contribution. Nanny is the forerunner of what, if we say liberation, yeah? Because that's why she set up Nanny Town, because she feels that she was never born a slave, and she don't want to be a slave. So she set up Nanny Town, and all the runaway slaves came to Nanny Town. I embarked on this piece of women working in the plantation, and this one figurehead is there to say, it all came into being because of me, and all women should try to aspire to who Nanny was.
I noticed on social media there was a call out from historians to get involved in a project looking at the Darley Abbey Mill. And that was the very mill where my ancestors had moved to, so the children could go and work in there. So I volunteered my time to research, and I was just hooked when I had the chance to meet the legacy makers in person. It was fantastic to meet all these people I'd only met on Zoom and by email, and to present this idea to them about taking this historic data and presenting that in a new sculpture. And the aim is to create a co-produced sculpture with the community of two women, almost intertwined, sort of coming out of the earth in this sort of joyous celebration. We are your ancestors, you are here as based on our contribution, and to have them actually displayed within a garden that continues that narrative. This journey of discovery, for me personally, looking at the lives of my own ancestors and discovering those connections with the enslaved on the other side of the world, but then bringing that into the public realm and being open and honest and starting a dialogue with people about that rich history, that shared culture, but that transparency, I think, is really important.
I was keen to find out if the collaboration between the legacy makers and the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site resulted in any enhanced awareness for visitors to its sites, to educate them about its global connections and acknowledge the contributions made by those enslaved. So I held a Zoom meeting with Georgina Greaves to find out.
We came across the legacy makers because they had been doing some work across some of the different sites up and down the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site. But one of the themes we wanted to make sure people were thoroughly aware of was around the links between Derwent Valley Mills as a World Heritage Site, which was cotton spinning and silk throwing, and that sort of global trade and the links to enslavement. And we wanted to make sure that the people who were going to be on the strategic board and were working as volunteers and were part of the technical group sort of aware of that link, because we know we weren't making enough of it. It wasn't acknowledged enough. And we were also aware that the actual staff on site and the volunteers on site are not particularly diverse. So we knew the legacy makers had done some work and had visited the sites and had highlighted some of these issues to us. So what we wanted to do was actually involve them in the training of the teams that are working on the different sites up and down the valley, just to give us that proper perspective and that proper opinion. So what we did was we did a training session that was online because of the time that we did it. And both Helen and Lisa and a set of the volunteers were involved in that training. It was really well received. It was really useful. We had some really open and honest discussions, which was great, because it had been something that a lot of the sites were a little uncomfortable about, weren't really well enough informed around, I think, and we're uncertain of how to acknowledge that and fit it in. So it was a great starter in terms of like setting up where we were going to go and where we were going to go from there. And I think that awareness that the sort of legacy makers helped us to bring made sure that it's included in the new children's guide, been acknowledged in some of the interpretation on site. One of the sites has actually written a new leaflet and booklet and gone on to do some more training and worked with the legacy makers on getting their leaflets together. So it's been really useful. I wouldn't say we've achieved everything, but we've made a better start, I think. The Belper North Mill have basically had a new volunteer guide written so that when their volunteers are doing the tours around the mill, they incorporate where the cotton came from, how that was actually harvested and what impacts that had as part of their story of the heritage of the site, which was based a lot on the research that I know the Legacy Makers team had done, and alongside Suzanne Seymour and so on from the University of Nottingham.
Like their other sites up and down the valley, the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site were keen to ensure that the global cotton connection links to this site were acknowledged. And thanks to the legacy makers and their partners, future visitors to this site can see those cotton links by use of a new interpretation board soon to be unveiled. This board features the mill's global cotton connections and acknowledges the contributions made by those enslaved. So how did the legacy makers respond to that?
I'm happy about that, and I can't wait to see it, because it will it will enlighten people and educate people as well. It's not just to educate white people and tell them about us, but it's also to educate my people, black people, the younger people. There will be something for them to look at, and hoping that they will carry on.
During the course of the project, Legacy Makers has built up a strong network of volunteers, as well as allies in community organisations, academic institutions, as well as arts and heritage sites. So finally, what motivated people to become Legacy Maker volunteers? How were they affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? And in what other ways did they benefit by becoming part of the Legacy Makers family?
What makes me put my name down to become a legacy maker was because of my history, my ancestor history, and I don't really know much about my history, so I thought that's a good opportunity for me to learn.
I became very interested in this group because I was aware of the people that were working within the community to ensure that other people learn and know more about slavery and how it impacts on us even now.
When I went to school, I learnt more about the Jacobite Rebellion, the Industrial Revolution. I knew very little about black history, about the slavery in black history. I saw the shackles, the neck shackles, the ankle chains. It made me cry to know that, our ancestors has worked so hard for us, for me to be here as the person that I'm here today.
I'm more enlightened, and learning process is educational as well. I can talk to my children, grandchildren, and tell them about this journey, and they don't have to be ashamed of the ancestry when it comes to slavery.
Darley Abbey, which we've sort of visited on a number of occasions, stands out in my mind. There's a church, and we've met there on various occasions, and we've sort of discussed the issues. And I've noticed that some of the members there have actually, taken on board a lot of the points that we've made, and in fact, some of them have gone away and done their own research. They've actually presented information that we didn't necessarily have.
So when I say anything about slavery or anybody talking about slavery, I feel now quite competent and confident to contribute towards their discussion.
This group is a lovely group. It's like when we meet to get together, and we've got a lot in common. I'm still learning, but it's like a family.
I've made new friends, and some really good friends, and I think these will be people that will stay with me when this project ends. And I just felt so loved, and I would say it's like a big hug with the group of people.
They do look after me and support me, and that's one of the things I do appreciate, and I am grateful.
It helped my mental well-being because I really look forward to coming. I keep thinking, because each time I came, I learned something new. I learned something new about myself. I learned something new about Arkwright. I learned something new about Colston. I learned something new about Derbyshire, because literally Derbyshire's route, it's only about an hour's trip from Nottingham. But I very rarely came here, and I was able to go back and talk to my children.
The project has been a lifesaver for me because I'm a carer for my husband who has dementia. Initially, he used to come out with me, and it was okay because he could understand quite a bit then, and he was amongst people which he enjoyed. But gradually, his condition worsened, so he wasn't able to continue with the project. I was always included. I was always told about any outings that they're going on. They take that special interest in you, wanting to know how you're doing and also how your husband's doing.
I've done a lot of things in Legacy Makers and Slave Trade Legacy, call it what you like, that I would not have even dreamed about if I've not been part of Legacy Makers.
I think the surprising outcome is how people outside or organisations outside of the Legacy Maker has heard about us and want to work with us, like Rachel Carter, the sculptor, and how there's this plan for 2025 to have a Legacy Makers garden, and then for us to have a statue of a slave woman and a mill worker, and when the show is finished, that statue, those statues and part of the garden will be brought back to Nottingham.
Until COVID, it was like going out on a day trip. I was going to learn. I am so pleased that I'm able to join again and to know that the group is still going, because that's what really keeps me going now, knowing that I can meet up again with my friends and hopefully make new friends.
During COVID, even though we didn't have many group meetings, I was able to communicate by text. I was able to communicate to other members when I saw them in the street.
They've kept things going, even when the going was tough. Tough didn't get going, tough stayed. The project still continued, underground, overground, you know what I mean? The project still continued. And I felt like I'd say that our ancestors was just saying to us, all of us were part of it, you can't stop now. You need to keep going. We didn't stop when things went wrong or we didn't like it. We still had to go. COVID or no COVID, you need to get going. So, you know, whatever happened, there were little bits. It weren't on the scale, because remember, pills weren't open to use equal. But whatever little that could be done was still done, and that what kept the project going.
So when I looked at cotton now, and it reminded me also about the journey, what we made, but because even me myself, I didn't really know much about cotton, apart from cotton material, but I did never really think that deep about where that comes from, where it comes from, and our involvement, my ancestor involvement in it.
When I see cotton now, I think about it very, very differently. And I think about my ancestors. I think about the part and the role they played in it. And I think also about pain and anger that they experienced. But now when I think about cotton, I also think about me. I'm here, and I'm a product of people who worked within the cotton. My ancestors worked in there, and whatever it is that they left, I've got it strong and good.
It's been a great project. For me, it's just beginning. So for me, I'm proud that, this is us. I love it.
This heritage project has been more than skin deep. It's been soul searching. It was about finding those wider connections, those shared histories. It wasn't about blame, but about acknowledgement. Acknowledgement for the contribution our ancestors made to the material wealth of this country, and they deserve to be remembered with respect and with love.
me on this ancestral journey. My ancestors inspire me. They live on through legacy. I see drums, I hear sounds, and I feel distant voices. My ancestors ignite me, and their courage sets me free. Kept me in a lock and key with no feelings in your heart, but my ancestors remind me that their legacy lives on. I see drums, I hear sound, and I feel distant voices. I am your ancestor, and my work is never done. Grandpa, what did you leave me on this ancestral journey? You survived from dusk till dawn, working in the blazing sun, beyond a bad dream. Speak to my soul, a broken hole. I feel empathy and pain, but the will to carry on. African heritage erased, lands claimed and still being stolen. A reality that history is often tried to hide. Enslaved people, please remember through your blood, sweat, tears, and genius. You built Western civilization, which must not be denied. Cotton, creative mechanisms, open industrial doors. Even now, we never know how the wheel of life will turn. My ancestors stayed determined and persistent through their trials. So I know I can stay strong and let their stories brightly burn. Lives of labour, terrible journeys, generations of anger. She passes, and another of her sisters take her place. Grandma, Grandpa, do you see me on this ancestral journey? I see the marks of your survival in the features of my face. So you ask, where do we go now on this long ancestral journey? We remember, and we sing as we accept the tears we shed. We listen, learn and laugh. We make noise and we remember that the end is the beginning. The right now, the final thread.